Yeah, that was interesting. It recorded and it did not say it was set to record. It usually does. Okay. Hopefully my volume is okay. If it isn't, let me know. Playing around with it earlier when I was setting things up. So welcome this afternoon. This session is called Engaging with Indigenous Languages in the Classroom. It is brought to you by the Alberta Regional Professional Development Consortia, or ARPDC, and we're funded through Learn Alberta. I belong to the ERLC, which is the Edmonton Regional Learning Consortium. Land acknowledgement first before we get going. So Tansei, I live on Treaty 7 land, which is the ancestral home of the Blackfoot people. There are Dene and Métis Nation regions 5 and 6 people here as well. I belong to Region 5, and all have contributed to the shaping of Alberta and Canada. I thank the Blackfoot people particularly for sharing their land with me. If you do know the treaty land you live on, or if you are by a settlement, or if you're one of the 3 school divisions that does not or is not close to treaty land or on it, then you can always put the names of the individual, the cultures that have been displaced from that land. Well, I'm going to start with this. Tanse, Tame, Nitsiki-san, Kiete, Selkirk, Manitoba, Odsenia, Megatutsquan, Miigwats, Nuigan, Ogiskin, Wahamagunia, Kiamaga. So I've been learning Cree at Misganawa in Calgary. I'll be starting my 4th session. It'll make it a year at the end of April this year. My grandfather, and you can see a picture of my great-grandfather there, James Mowat, they spoke Cree. I am Métis, and as I get into the presentation, you'll understand Métis actually speak 4 languages: English, French, Cree, and Michif. My family being primarily British background, being Scottish and English, with a little bit of French in the family, spoke Cree. Most of the British background Métis people did in fact speak that instead of Michif, mainly those of French background. I do have some French in my family, as you'll see, but welcome. So what I said to you was, hello, welcome. How are you? So Tansei can mean hello, welcome, how are you? Tawao is actually welcome itself. And then I just told you that my name is Tammy. I'm from Selkirk, Manitoba originally, and that I live in Calgary, which is Tusquan, means elbow in Cree, and that I'm a teacher. And then I asked Kiamaga, so how about you? So who are you? And basically all that information. There are separate questions to ask for that, but I didn't go into each one because we're not having a direct conversation. So under ARPDC, I'm called a designer of professional learning. We do these sessions online for teachers that have come about since COVID to provide regular PD sessions for teachers, as well as face-to-face. I do presentations very much like this one. I also do full-day workshops in school divisions and wherever they may be requested to work with groups of educators in order to implement First Nations, Métis, and Inuit Indigenous ways of knowing in the classroom and to address specific Indigenous issues that may be occurring in their area. Selkirk, Manitoba, which is north of Winnipeg, is part of what was historically known as the Red River Settlement and part of the original colony of Métis people that lived in Manitoba. My great-grandpa, as you can see that picture, there's James Mowat. My mother's maiden name is Mowat. There are also McDonald's, Mackays, and Beaudries in my family, and the Beaudries are a French voyageur Métis family from Alberta. My family did live in Alberta for a time, a number of years actually. My great-grandfather Andrew, James's father, and family all lived in Fort Saskatchewan and also had land at Fort Edmonton. Eventually they did move back to Manitoba. Métis are known for going and traveling a lot, and particularly going across the prairies. Again, why we're all related to each other in some way or another. In Fort Saskatchewan, there is a school named after my great-grandpa, James Mowat Elementary, and next door there is a park called Mowat Park named after my family. And in Edmonton, there's James Mowat Trail. It's spelled with 2 T's, but it doesn't really matter. Next to that picture of my great-grandpa is a picture of my grandpa Rosser, who's the middle boy there, and his 2 brothers, Oliver and Stanley, and my great-aunt Tassie. in her Sunday best clothing. I estimate that picture would be about 1916, as my grandpa looked to be about 6 years old there. And the picture of my great grandpa is the late 1800s. I'm very lucky to have lots of family pictures, and particularly those ones, which are really cool and historic. My entire family is found in the Hudson's Bay archives. There's under script and also their service records for the Hudson Bay Company. And going back to, gosh, the first man who came over was John Fable, and he came from England actually, and he was one of the first of the English, because they recruited the Hudson Bay Company, first recruited in London, and he was from there, and he was a young man. I think he was in his late teens when he came to Canada and married a Swampy Cree woman named Titameg, which is translation in Swampy Cree means whitefish. There's a Tikameg, if you may know that, as well in around Red Earth Creek, where there's Kittascano Tribal Council, which I also worked for, to create a program for their outreach, which was grade 7 to 9. It involved the fall, winter, and spring seasons for all the curricular, the core subjects for all those grades. And it included land-based learning, which we're now moving to calling culture-based learning, as well as a Cree language, and indigenized it for their area and decolonized it as well from all of the information that was not needed or should not have been included in the curriculum in the first place. I have worked in education since I started teaching in 1988, so a while. And I've been in Calgary almost 30 years, but I still consider the Red River area to be my home. And if you ask most Indigenous peoples, you know, where they feel at home, it would be probably where their family is from, originally the land that is there. And as well as me introducing myself that way, the two questions that we generally ask each other are, you know, who are you and where are you from? So we want to know who are your people and where's your land? And so those are the two big questions. I started off with explaining this to you in Korean and telling you, because I think it's important to understand when I'm doing this presentation how deeply rooted, I would say, some of the trauma and pain of losing our languages has been for Indigenous peoples in Canada, and the effect of it, aside from removing people from their lands, which included my family as well, from their lands along the Red River. Not being able to speak your languages. Like I said, my grandfather spoke Cree, but he taught my mom a little bit, but he never taught his grandchildren. He wouldn't talk to my mom and dad either. And there's lots of reasons for that, right? And because they were get into the whole of Métis history, but you know, you had to make sure that people didn't know that you were Métis and passed for white, because otherwise, and I had somebody actually say this to me today when I volunteered a shower program, and this gentleman was talking to me, goes, well, it was a long time ago that these things were happening about being removed from land and such. And I said, actually, no, it's not that long ago. It actually, the last time that Métis were removed from land was the early 80s. It was happening in the 1970s and 80s, as well as I pointed out to him as well that there was a settlement called St. Bernadette in Manitoba, where the people were out harvesting in the 1960s, late 1960s. They came home to find their homes burned down with all of their belongings gone and their dogs shot. So that was then. And then, as well as residential schools, including Métis people attending residential schools and First Nations. And you know what? The last ones closed in the early 90s. And my children were born in 1991 and 1993. And so there were still residential schools occurring then. So just so that people have a context of, you know, how long this has been going on in terms of, you know, having to hide who you were and such. And so amazingly though now, right, with there's with UNDRIP, especially through United Nations and the revitalization of Indigenous languages around the world, particularly really important. This has become a focus as well in Canada. A few years ago when this was instituted by the United Nations. And so all kinds of programs have existed, you know, in the last about 5 years or so. One that I belong to is in Misconaway in Calgary. And I've been lucky that not only are the courses provided for free, but also the textbooks and the dictionary and all kinds of things have been provided to us through this programming and funding that they've received. So it's quite amazing. And I can tell you that for myself, I'm never been so more grateful for something, to have that, because as you'll see, it really connects us back to who we are as people. So, and I think anybody that's here and wanting to do that work and to help with this is amazing that you're here. Before I get into the meat of the presentation, though, I'm going to go through some of the ARPDC resources that are available for Métis, First Nations, and Inuit, just so that you know where they are. These are some really great resources that are already created by Alberta teachers for Alberta teachers. And so Empowering the Spirit is definitely one. And if you haven't ever been to this website, I imagine you, even if you haven't gone to it directly, you've somehow stumbled onto it through other things. It's quite a deep website. It's got lots of information on it. But yeah, so this is, and I always tell people that when I'm doing my research, I see it referenced across post-secondary programs, particularly education programs across the country. I've seen it referenced in the United States as well as through library services, particularly. If you have no time other than to take a peek at this and go to Orange Shirt Day and beyond, always try to look at the teaching tools, because there are a number of things there available for you guys. Particularly, there is level posters, so by division for sharing circles and for Orange Shirt Day. So I'm just going to check that chat here. Somebody's posted something. Oh, hey, Shauna. No, that's okay. No problem. Okay, I think she may have. I'm not sure if she left already. Let me see. Oh, sorry. Yeah, she did. Sorry. She had to leave. She sent me a message. She had to leave. So you can search by focus on here, which is really easy to do. So I'm going to go down to First Nations, Métis, and Inuit. And then it comes up with all the resources that are available. So you'll see things like Our Way is a Valid Way and Education Hours of Buffalo. I always point those out because I remember having those in my classroom when I was teaching or in my office, depending what I was doing. And then you can search by audience, by level, by type. And you'll also notice at the very top of the browser too, there's browse by TQS or LQS, there's information, and then you can explore future websites as well. So there's lots of really great tools on there too. So I always encourage people to start there, at least, because it's already created for you guys, and it's by Alberta teachers, so that's always a bonus. So I've given you a little bit of background just on a personal level, but I want to, and I know you guys are not, and this video does refer to specific Indigenous language programs, and nobody is expecting you to do that unless that's something you're already involved in, right? Because nobody's saying you're going to be teaching a specific language. I just want to be able to show you some ways to include Indigenous languages in your programming and in your classrooms. But this video does explain, again, a little bit more about that and the importance of including Indigenous languages. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Huh. I don't know. Let me try to go to YouTube. Maybe that'll make a difference. Yeah, it'll probably be too loud. It was working early this afternoon when I tried it. Maybe this works okay. Unfortunately, now I'm going to get some ads. Let's try this. It did say something about my YouTube player was having problems when I was working in Google Slides, so that could be the reason. I apologize here.
We brought you here today to let you know that we made the decision to click up.
Sorry. I think I got it. I got it figured out here. Fixed it. Hold on 1 second. Okay, here we go. Let's get a spool for a while. Oh my goodness.
When we share our language, we all have our different cultures, our beliefs, our languages. They are the most powerful gifts that we're blessed with from the Creator.
When we say a language, it's culture. In my tribe, without the language, the culture is lost.
And sometimes there are some words or some phrases or expressions that are only understood or known by your group. So that gives you a sense of cohesiveness, belonging to a specific group.
A lot of elders go as far as saying that the language itself has a spirit.
Our relationship to land and language is really interconnected. So when you go out on the land to identify place names and landmarks, you begin to identify our ecology, our relationship to the plants, to the wildlife. It's really important for our children because right now, if the current trend continues, by about 2027, there will only be about 2% speaking Blackfoot. So we've got to do a dramatic turnaround.
And in today's world, the young people, because of language being strict, it's hard to identify.
I grew up in the wilderness. My mom and dad were both trappers. And we all spoke Cree, 100% Cree, until I was 6 years old when I was taken away to the Indian residential school.
And eventually they would lose their language. And when they returned home after they completed school, they were just removed and sent back home. And you can imagine the alienation or the strangeness of meeting your mother or your father, but you can't talk to each other because neither of you speak each other's language.
It's better today, far better now. A lot of young people are trying to learn their language.
They should make an attempt to have some kind of language offerings for First Nations.
It was, we developed program of studies where you pull kids out and they have Cree for maybe half an hour a day, maybe 3 times a week or whatever. Well, that model doesn't work. That's like after 30 years of it being, used, because it's not enough time. So now I think we're getting the elders are saying we need immersion programs.
We have to figure that piece out because that's the piece, I think, to maintain the culture. The curriculum's there. We just need the teachers and where do we do it. We're kind of thinking if we could start a language-based program for those students starting at grade 7 and have them moving through all the way. Right? To me, that's the next biggest step. If we don't tackle that piece at some point long after we're gone, their language will be gone.
Language is the whole culture for us, and it connects with the land. The nature, teaches us, and our fathers, grandfathers, and I think language is, the key point for culture.
When we share our language, we all have our different cultures, our beliefs, our languages. They are the most powerful gifts that we're blessed with from the Creator.
I just started a loop. So I think especially, those quotes are really important to understand when you take away language from any culture, from people, there's a disconnection. And I think the way that I can maybe equate this for people here, perhaps to understand is, 'cause many people I know are immigrants or product of immigration to Canada, no matter how long ago it was. But I know that growing up in Winnipeg, or going to school in Winnipeg anyways, most of my friends, especially downtown, because I live downtown and then in the North End, and a good majority of them were from other places, Ukraine, Poland, Greece, Portugal, Italy. And so a lot of these kids that I knew, there were conflicts with their families when I was young. So we're talking like the 1970s into the 80s. And a lot of that had to do with a loss of language. And what I mean by that is that there's certain things in each language that cannot be conveyed when they're translated. There's certain things in each language that cannot be conveyed when one is speaking English or French and the other is speaking their native language. And so in Canada, when the language were taken away, particularly to go to residential schools, as they were saying in that video, it created a whole lot of destruction amongst families. This is something else I was pointing out to this person today. Um, the damage done when you cannot communicate with your children and your grandchildren is insurmountable in this case. And then couple that with the traumas and things like that that have gone on. So one thing as educators, I think that can be done is really starting to do some of these things. So this is why I wanted to say, why is it important, right, to engage with Indigenous languages? Like, why are you here and why are we learning about this? Well, as I say, for Indigenous peoples, this links us to our cultures, right? This is something that colonization tried to erase. And I know with myself being Métis, I've often had this question, and I've even had some strange dreams lately about people questioning about these things. Maybe I'm working through it in my brain, and particularly because I don't look Indigenous. As people, I had a lady say that to me the other day when I told her I was Métis, I was volunteering somewhere. She goes, "You don't look it," and I said, "Actually, I do," because I'm thinking to myself, "What does Métis look like?" I said to her, "I'm Scottish Métis. A lot of us look like me, right?" I said, this is here. She looked very perplexed. She was an older white lady and she looked very confused. And I just thought, you need to think about this, right? We're hiding in plain sight for some of you. We're not necessarily looking like we're native necessarily. My grandfather did. My cousins and my cousins do. I don't, right, specifically. But if I'm at home in Winnipeg, I remember as a kid, I'd be standing at a bus stop in university, and if there were native people standing at the bus stop, they would come and talk to me. They could tell from just looking at me from the side, or I don't know if it was attitude or behavior or what it was, but they knew. They would talk to me instead of other people. So there's things that we know about each other that we see, but that language piece is so hard. It's really important that Indigenous kids start to see themselves in the classroom, and that people understand too, like as a Métis person, that I love that. I want to get a t-shirt made of this. Somebody that I met at a meeting, she was saying that we're post-contact pre-colonial people. So we are definitely of European background, but we're not. So if that makes any sense, right? So we are our own culture, and so we see things very differently, and we don't see ourselves in schools. This is something that's really important to us. First Nations kids, I think, are starting to see themselves more in schools, which is really important. I know that we don't for sure, and I don't know that Inuit people do, at least here. I'm not going to focus on the Inuit right now just because there aren't as many in our schools. I'm really going to look at the Cree language, the Blackfoot, Dene, and Michif, right? Because those will be the main ones that are around here. It's really important too, as we look at, like that one lady said in the video, that our elders, teach us that language has a spirit like everything that's created. And that's what I've been taught in my Cree classes, is that the language itself holds a spirit and it changes people. And it does, as like, I can't even explain it. And for those even in our classes that are not Indigenous that are taking the classes, they do find it connects them to spiritualism. It connects them to everything, and it broadens your mind. I can't even explain the change in most of the people that are there, and just the point of view that changes your mind and the way that you think. It changes that perspective, that Western perspective that you may have still, even for myself, right? It just starts to really pull that away from you just even more. So it's really interesting, right? It's really important to understand too that there's so much that cannot be translated from Indigenous languages into English or French. So much is lost. That's why it's so important to me to learn the language too, so that when I pray in this language or I speak to somebody who speaks Cree, that we understand each other. There's things I can't convey in English, or they cannot as well. And lastly, I think it's really important that non-Indigenous students need to learn to respect and appreciate Indigenous cultures. This is the land of the First Nations, the Métis and the Inuit, and we need to have that reconciliation piece can only occur when there's an understanding of who we are and then that respect as well. So ways to include Indigenous languages, right? Lots of different ways that you can do this. And probably some of you are already attempting this if you're here. But, books and videos, obviously, displaying and using vocabulary in your classroom. I was in a classroom in Tabor, maybe it was almost a month ago now, doing a presentation, and it was a whole day thing that for their educators there was a PD day. And it was amazing. This classroom was amazing. She had displays of all kinds of Indigenous stuff. It was all Blackfoot stuff because it's in the South, right? They're on Blackfoot territory, and she had language up. And so I was even learning some Blackfoot words. It was really cool. It was just an amazing classroom. She had all this kinds of stuff up, and you could tell the kids were learning this vocabulary, some verbs about doing things, counting, all that kind of really cool stuff. And I would say the class was, I think it was probably around grade 5, right, from looking at it. There's also, you can listen to Indigenous songs so that kids get to hear that, and understand that the language is used in that. There's apps for pronunciation and dialects. And I always tell people, if you're afraid, if there's books, and because a lot of these books are on YouTube as well that you can use instead of having to read them yourself. But if they aren't, there's apps for pronunciation and dialects, all kinds of them on the app stores, whichever, if you use an Android or if you use an Apple phone. And then you can invite Indigenous speakers into your classroom, and then they can, speak to the kids. I want to first point out, if you don't know, because I don't know who else is in here right now. I know some people have had to scoot for doing different things. I know I recognize some names. Sorry if this is redundant, but using Indigenous language, like for instance, Strong Nations has a specific search engine for languages. So I already got it on Indigenous languages. And so you can search, as you look down the left-hand side, you can search for language literature, literary studies. You can do language learning, language revitalization, oral language, and stories in the series that are involved in that. So there's all kinds of things in here by all different grade levels, et cetera, that are available in that. So that's Strong Nations. I think Good Minds, I didn't mean, I wasn't just picking Cree because I was going to the languages area, but so this will propagate all of the Cree books, and as you can see, there's 81 of them. But if you click on languages in Good Minds as well, as you can see all of the different languages that are here, right? So we've got, all the things pretty much in Canada, right, that are available for us in Good Minds. So you can look at that. And then Medicine Wheel Publishing, which overlaps because I know that they do supply books to these other publishers as well. And but oh gosh, I guess I clicked on that actually. That one has obviously in French, but they have language books here as well for different languages. This happens to be, they're on the Salish coast, yeah, that's what they're working in. So they've got a lot of that, but they've got language books for every area. And then there are Michif books, and there are more places to find them other than Gabrielle Dumont Institute, but there's the Tanshe books that are Michif English edition, the Emergent Reader series. I cannot speak today, I apologize. It's the end of the month. Oh my goodness. Anyway, but there's a 27-book set, but there are other books on here that have to do with Michif as well. Another place you might want to look is Rupert's Land Institute, because I know that Leah Dorian, who's one of my favorite authors, Métis authors for kids, has a series of books on there as well. And they're both in English as well as in Michif. So that's also a place to start. But if we look at some general language resources for Alberta, I just want to point out some websites that we have that are specific to Alberta that are created, already for us. There's Learn Alberta has a language, cultural identity, and voice page. But it does get really, it's just kind of some, excuse me, pedagogical background for teachers teachers, and really talking about, you know, kind of the stuff that I'm asking you guys to do is to really reflect on, you know, what is it about language that is important, right? And Indigenous knowledge that is carried through language, and, you know, looking at the pedagogy of that. But then, you know, Alberta education itself has some documents as well. And this is actually, and this is for Cree, but they do have different language and culture annotated bibliographies and resource lists available that you can look at that have the books already and resources that have been sourced. So if you go onto their website, there's a list of them as well, so that you can find, and the Learning Resource Center itself has these books. So that's the other part of it too, right? And it's available. And I know they have them in Blackfoot as well. But anyway, this document is available there. So there's a link for that so that you can access that. And then the U of Alberta has a really, really good website with a guide on it as well. The Teaching and Learning Indigenous Languages, and it's a literature review that was prepared for Edmonton Public Schools. And it's not that old. So it's, you know, being that it's pretty recent, just go through it. It gives you all the different background. It gives you, you know, information about Indigenous language educators as well, and then materials that have been developed. Not that I'm going to go through those documents, but I just want you to be aware of them so that you have those available to you and you can look those up in terms of you searching information. Now I want to get into the individual languages. So we'll talk about Cree first. If you are looking for resources for Cree particularly. So the Cree Literacy Network, I don't know how many people know about this, but there's tons of stuff on here. And I go here all the time myself. And I know Solomon Rad on here is called the Y dialect, but my elders have actually said that he's not necessarily using a Y dialect because that's what we're learning. But again, there's those differences, right, in languages. And Cree has 5 main dialects, but there's like 15 when you break it down into different areas. And so anyways, there's lots of stuff on here too. For instance, like learning about colors, you know, how to say different things, and songs for kids, and Cree cultural teachings, and the sunrise song. So Wanska, so you can learn that. So you go Tante Otse, which is what I said to you guys. So Tante Otse, right? So where are you from, and talking about where you're from, and all kinds of stuff on there, and some links to some other things as well. So it's a really great place to start. And then I also want to show you guys on YouTube, there's a series of videos that are available for teaching Cree as well, for Cree language. So this is Kathy Wheaton-Bird and Cree by Kathy. And so she has a whole bunch of playlists on here and she's got beginner speaker tips and things like that. So lots of guidance. She even has Cree Christmas carols on here. And she's got stuff in Woodland Cree. So she's like all kinds of really great stuff on here too. So I wanted to include some different ones. She also has, besides Woodland, she also has some stuff in Swampy. She even has some Soto and Ojibwe there as well, and Plains Cree. So there's lots of different stuff on there. And then when you look at dictionaries, this is the dictionary that people mainly use. I have to say it's not my favorite dictionary, but a lot of people do use this. And it is looking more at the Maskwacis Cree, which is what I'm learning as well. It's very close to what I'm learning, but it's not necessarily my favorite dictionary when I'm looking up information when I'm studying. This is actually my favorite dictionary. So, and because one of the reasons is it actually has some of the pronunciation as well, but with an audio. So you can click on the audio and it will come up as well. So that helps a lot too. And then like I said, I worked with KTCA, Kataskanal Tribal Council, and they actually have some really good stuff on their website too. I don't know that many people know about it. And then this is Woodland Cree. And so they actually have a radio show. I don't know how many they've done lately, but they have had a radio show that they've done, and I've listened to it before. And then they also have the Elders app, which I have on my phone too. So they have an app that's for Woodland Cree. And they've got Culture Knows. And I know Maskwacis does as well. I also have that app on my phone. I've got quite a few of those for different kinds of Cree available. So that's some of the Nehia information. So Blackfoot, the Siksika language, So I know for myself in the South that, and I'm trying to learn more because I'm focused on Cree. I haven't learned as much about the Blackfoot. Um, but there's some really good online resources here on this particular page. Um, and I'm not even going to attempt to say anything in their language because I do not want to butcher it. But they have links on this page to their online dictionary, oral stories database, there's conversational phrases, there's Blackfoot grammar. There's a whole lot of stuff. There's resources about the Blackfoot language. Like this page in particular is just a really good one. So there's lots of stuff on here that you guys can look through too. And then the University of Calgary, because of course we're on Treaty 7 land, just like the U of A has more of the Cree stuff. And they, not to say that they don't, because they do have Cree. They also have the Dene for Sutina, and they've got some Stoney Nakoda. And I didn't include that, unfortunately, but I don't have as many resources for Stoney Nakoda. Hopefully I can add those. But tons of stuff in here as well. So they've got Siksika language, Blackfoot language, all that stuff. And they've got links to, again, all of those books and things like that, and the resources that you can order. And then the Blackfoot Revitalization Program, which is super important, that was started a number of years ago by a young Blackfoot person, which is cool. And then there's Four Directions Teachings that has lots of stuff about the Blackfoot Confederacy as well, people there. So there's tons of stuff there that you can look at. That's mostly general stuff, but there are things on here particularly that are specific to Blackfoot language. There's a Blackfoot language curriculum for junior grades, middle grades, and for senior grades too. And then I thought that this would be a good thing to look at. So this is Simon Fraser University, and this is the researchers have been reviving the Blackfoot language, and the Blackfoot language is endangered. Muskanawa also offers Blackfoot language classes, but honestly, they're not even full a lot of the time, unfortunately, and I don't know the reason for that. We've talked about it in our class for Cree. That Cree, there's a waiting list for people to get in. So it's a real difference, and particularly because in this province, like you saw in that video, they say only 2% of people are estimated to be speaking Blackfoot now. So it's kind of scary that they need to be doing this. So Simon Fraser did create a new online resource, and so this is information about that. And then I guess the computer science students also built Blackfoot chat bots, which is really cool, and that was funded through the government. And then this is also another resource for the Blackfoot language and Indigenous languages resource, but tons of stuff on here, which I think is really good. It's got the Blackfoot syllabics rather, and then the alphabet, lots of stuff about the words involved in there, and just about the language period. And then there's beginning Blackfoot languages lessons, and then a whole bunch of course, it's broken into Siksika, Pegam, Kainai, Blackfeet. So there are different ones, right? Some from Alberta to Montana, but from what I read here in Alberta, they generally refer to it as Siksika as the language. And if we look at Dene, so I know that there are people in the north as well, right? That and I have a friend who's from Fort Chip originally, and she's actually Dene and Cree. A lot of people are, I guess, because of that area. But there's more information here about the Dene language, and I have to be honest, I don't know a lot about it, but there's a whole list of different resources there that you can get. But then I did find these particular documents in PDF, which are really good. So here's like the South Slavey Topical Dictionary. So there's a free dictionary online. I have not found a search engine yet for Dene dictionary, but at least this is available in print if anybody's interested in using that. And there's lots of words there. So yeah, that's kind of cool. And then this one as well. Well, to propagate. Goodness, I know it's a big file, so it's taking a while. Sorry. It's taking taking a lot less time than I did this afternoon, because oh my goodness. So this is actually another dictionary, Chippewa dictionary, but it's more detailed and it has lots of visuals. That's why it's taking longer to load too, because it's got lots of color in it. So it's more detailed than the other one because that's a pretty basic one, right? But and I like it too because it's divided into different sections, right? Which is always useful when you're trying to teach the kids the different words in it. So yeah. And I can't even tell you, I don't even know if my friend knows any Dene herself, because unfortunately a lot of us, like, we just didn't learn our languages, right? I know her mom speaks Cree because I've met her. She and I get to joke around a little bit. It's kind of fun to do that. And this is a Dene language revitalization course handbook that I found. And I'm not saying you have to teach the kids out of a handbook, but I think it would just give you perhaps just some ideas, right? Like it has a verb phrase book in it. It's got a story, a couple of stories. It's got a Christmas prayer, all that kind of stuff in it, depending on what kind of school division you're in. This is kind of right. So it's got the different sounds that you make. So if you're used to doing all that kind of work. I've done some of that because I've worked with students that are immigrants and refugees and getting them to work with learning English, doing some of that stuff with ESL. So I know because we have a computer program that we've used before that uses those visuals as well. This is another site that I found too that has First Voices, and it's a beta version, but it does have word of the day, and which is nice too because it has the audio, right? So it's nice because and I know the audio because they get people to record. The Cree ones are like that too. They got that fuzziness in the background, unfortunately, but at least it's better than nothing at this point. And then this is the Dene resources on here. So you'll see down the side, there's a whole list of and also they've also have the Inuit resources as well, which I didn't necessarily include. And they also have some Cree ones there too. So there's lots of stuff on this page for you guys, and it even has the orthographic conventions. Like I said, that's the ones that I used when I was teaching ESL. And the Michif. So we'll get to Michif. And as I said to you guys, the Métis speak one or more of 4 languages. Michif itself is disappearing. There are more of us that speak Cree. And I think that's probably because there has been more funding available for that and more work done with that. My hope for myself is because I have basic French from Manitoba as well, probably more French than most people do, but basic for me, that I can, once I learn Cree, that I can learn Michif as well, because I've looked at some of it and the crossover in terms of, because it is a cross-cultural language, to be able to do that. But there are more resources, and I'm going to show you some of those. So Rupert's Land has developed some. And Rupert's Land is also the one I mentioned to you, has some of the Leodorian books, especially that are in English and in Michif. And this is a foundational knowledge theme, and I'm actually doing this course right now. There's a number of these books that are involved in it because I would just, for my own knowledge of learning about the Métis, particularly in Alberta, because I grew up in Manitoba and getting more of that history, I'm always learning more. But it does give you some of that background information. It gives you ideas about, the Michif language. It gives you history. It gives you history of the people in terms of understanding the combination of that, mainly Cree and European, but there's also some Ojibwe involved in it sometimes too. In my family, there is for sure. But talking about the development of the Michif language and how that works, because often people think that it's like I even actually, somebody said this to me the other day, it's a patois language, and I had to first of all explain to him. I said, well, it's not. But secondly, please don't tell me about my own culture, because seriously, he started to actually tell me, and people do this, they do it to First Nations people all the time, to explain it to me. And I was like, no, that's not it. But anyways, there's all these lessons on here in Michif. So there's tons of those on here as well. So that's something you can look at. And then Indigenous Voices is at the Métis Museum. It's something that you can look at. It's got a mature collection on here, but down here there's also lessons as well. So this is really cool. And it does link you back to the Gabrielle Dumont Institute as well too for some of their information. And there's Michif lessons with Rose Moran, and then there's also and I can't even, because I don't speak Michif, I don't know some of these words. I think they're spelled out more phonetically, like they would be in Cree anyway, but I will learn some more of this as I go. But Andrea Menard is on here as well. And then there's one Speak Michif in the office, and then learn Michif by listening. So there's some greetings and things like that. These are things I'm going to use once I'm more fluent in Cree. You know, and there's interviews as well with different people and workshops. Like, as you can see, there's tons of stuff on here. So much stuff, right? And interesting, Michif French interviews in St. Laurent. My aunt lives in St. Laurent. She's lived there for a number of years. But yeah, as you can see, lots of particularly French names of people that live there. And then these are also languages of the Michif lesson plans that you can access. So they'll download onto your Google Drive. And so there's, like you can see, there's K-2 Michif colors, engaging Michif weather, introductions to heritage Michif, Michif animals, all the things. And there's classroom labels that you can use, the frog song, introduction to language. So there's all kinds of stuff on there as well. So many resources. And again, it depends what you're looking for. And I know that everybody's in different areas and, you know, connected to different local areas in terms of where they're at. Now, this is a whole page of just general resources about Indigenous languages. So this is not specific to a particular language, but again, this is U of Alberta. U of Alberta has a really great site for First Nations, Métis, and Inuit teacher resources, period. They're really good at curating these. I'm sorry if it's taking a long time. There we go. As you can see, so they've got tons of stuff on here, resources, period, but lots of stuff for language, as you can see, right? And they do link back to things like empowering the spirit, or like for education is our buffalo and that sort of thing, but just tons and tons and tons of resources so that you guys have that. And then this is important too, supporting Indigenous language revitalization. This is an entire website that's dedicated to this, right? And this is really important too. I love this quote. Everybody is equipped to learn their language because the language is in our DNA. It's a soul memory. It's in everything we do. And whether you believe in spiritualism or not, I practice Cree spirituality. And this really does touch home for me because the language, once I stopped getting over my fear of it, did come naturally. It was very natural, as a matter of fact, to even start to think in Cree. And I don't know if it's because I did hear my grandpa when I was a child, or I heard it around me as a child, but because there were people speaking it when I was a kid. But it just seems to be there. It's in our souls, right? For some reason, you know, but talking about that and just some background information about, you know, living the language and what it really means. And for me, in terms of spirituality, it's really another thing. Like I said to elders, I was like, I really want to be able to, whether you believe in this or not, I want to be able to hear my ancestors, my Cree ancestors, when I am in the sweat lodge. I want to be able to hear them. I want to be able to pray in that language so they can hear me as well. And so that's a really important thing for me. This is a link to a Cree resource, the University of Regina. There is an updated version of this book, but if anybody's interested, the reason it's really cool is because it has the textbook, it has a workbook, but it also has audio with it too. So if you're interested in learning any of the Cree language, or you're looking for audio recordings to teach the kids any of the phrases, there's a link and you can download all of them as MP3s. So this is a really good website. And I only have time for a couple more to show you, and then we'll go, because I like to leave some time at the end if anybody has any questions. But this is also, you know, looking at more revitalization, talking about, you know, introducing yourselves, right? So they have a Facebook page, they have all that kind of stuff. They have a Twitter account. So it's an, you know, Foundation for Endangered Languages. And they've got an initiatives database. They have all kinds of stuff on there too. So those are places to look. And it's also good for if you're teaching the older kids, like high school, and that this also gives them some places to do research if you're looking at anything to do with, you know, language revitalization, particularly for reconciliation. And this is a really cool one on Canadian Geographic. I just want to throw it in. It's mapping Indigenous languages in Canada, which I thought was really neat. personally, I just thought this was really cool. And it's about the number of people speaking Indigenous languages at home. And so this is pretty cool. But yeah, anyways, there's an article there. You can look at that if you want. Again, too, like I was thinking in terms of, if the older kids, I know grade 9, I taught grade 9 as well. And that's something I could maybe, I think of giving them a project to do. And then this is a page that it's just for Indigenous languages, and it has links to dictionaries and different books in the different languages. So there's books, for instance, Spirit by Richard Van Camp, and I know that's used in school sometimes, but it's available in the Dene and the Cree, and well, 2 different Cree, well, and also, and then yeah, 2 different Crees there. No, there we go. But so there's some different ways that it's available as well. So, and then if you also have Indigenous students in your classroom, that's something that you could make available to them. But yeah, and I have a couple more there too, but I'll let you guys, when you have time to look at that, there's resources at the ATA that are available for the International Decade of Indigenous Languages. It's still going on. And then the Indigenous Languages Resource Center at the Calgary Public Library. But I'm going to stop recording. And then I'm going to stop share. And then that way, if anybody